I'm Matt Landau from VRMB, and this is Unlocked, Season 8, First Mover Status. This episode features Kelly Hill of DoneRight Management, who is a trailblazer. She's a first mover with meaningful stuff like relationships and reputation in McCall, Idaho. But she's also a trailblazer literally. She likes extreme snowmobiling. She literally blazes new trails on her snowmobile. This interview is a first for the Unlocked podcast vault in that Kelly's destination was hit with the threat of unfair regulation because none of the professional vacation rental players like Kelly were involved in any of the decision making. And because this subject matter of advocacy and community building is such a slow burn, nothing happens overnight, we've decided to record the interview 3 months apart. So the first part, you'll hear about the axe that came down on Kelly and her business's livelihood, as well as some of her instincts, as fruitless as they may have felt back then, to respond to it. Part 2 is a fast forward 3 months later. It shares Kelly's story of mobilization, some of it working, some of it not, all the way up to being consulted by the city on matters that relate to vacation rentals. She's even been invited to a meeting titled "Are Short-Term Rentals at the Tipping Point of Causing Our Neighborhoods to Disintegrate?" This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation, and Breezeway, a property care and operations platform. As with every episode this season, we've kicked off the interview asking Kelly Hill, what does first mover status mean to you?
I believe it is the person or company that is either first to market or is the first to make an impression. And by that I mean, in my case, it would be that although I wasn't the first one in McCall to ever have a vacation rental, I think my company is one that is recognized with a reputation. And we had a presence here. We had an office, which is very important. There were other management companies in the area that were operating remotely. And I think it's imperative to have a presence there. We wrapped our vehicles. We got to know all of the real estate agents, which was hugely beneficial. I have to say that 90% of my referrals come from other agents in the area, the real estate agents. And so, yeah, that's what I think. It's the person who is first to have the best reputation.
And what do you think that has afforded you? Like, what have been some of the outcomes to you and your business as a result of that kind of activity?
Several things have happened. Like I said, I was, before I got my real estate license, I was the go-to person. I received calls from all of the agents and said, I have a client who is looking at, 3 properties, which one would make the best vacation rental? So I would go out with them and look at these properties and say, oh my goodness, this is what we could do with this. This is what we could do with that. And we could, remove this wall or add this wall, make this huge bonus room, a couple bedrooms. And so, ultimately that client would come to me. I always made it very clear that there was no obligation. I didn't want to put any type of pressure on anyone, and I certainly didn't charge for it. But it did give me, that reputation as the kind of the expert in the area.
Love that. And this is a fantastic tip for listeners. If you're looking to create that kind of impression, helping as opposed to trying to sell people, it earns trust and respect. And you may not see the sale or the new property acquisition immediately, but it kind of compounds over time, no?
That's correct.
Right on. So Kelly, I've known you for a number of years, and I've even visited there in McCall. We're going to touch on my visit in a few minutes. But first, I'd like to give our listeners a snapshot of your professional portfolio. And you mentioned real estate. Can you explain to us what the real estate side of your life looks like on paper?
Well, I like I said, I was kind of the go-to person for all of the real estate agents. And what happened is that I would have to rely on the agent to go with me to look at these properties. So I thought, gosh, it'd be handy if I got my real estate license, then I could just go view these properties without the agent present. So that's kind of the first stake that I thought that I had to get my license. But it was interesting. There were several people that came into my office saying, we visit McCall, we love McCall, and we'd like to buy a vacation rental. So I would refer them to another agent. And in addition, myself and my husband were buying properties in the area, and we'd always go to an agent. I'm like, why am I giving all this commission away? So I decided to get my license, and I had no idea of the value of that. Interestingly enough, at that time, I ran into people from my competitors like Vacasa, and they were getting, this agent was getting his license, and he said, yeah, we're just getting into the real estate market. And I'm like, interesting, because this is, and then it kind of boomed from there. I think that people see the value in getting your real estate license. In Idaho, we're not required to have a license. I know that most states actually require you to, if you are operating a property management company, you need to have your license. In Idaho, that's not the case, but there's a huge advantage to having that. All of my leads, I would not all of them, I'd say 90% of my leads come from my business, in that people who that we manage their homes. If they decide to sell, they would look to me, as hopefully as their agent. However, if those clients were referred to me by another agent that's still active, I refer them back to those agents, as not to lose my reputation with my fellow realtors in the area. So I've helped a lot of people sell their places, and then the people that come in, hopefully they'll resume with us. And I would say that 99% of them continue renting. They just, we'll use you again. The previous owners were thrilled with your company. We're going to continue using you.
I think that's such a wonderful example of the complement that vacation rental professionals bring to real estate and vice versa. So if you're not necessarily a Kelly who takes it upon herself to get her real estate license, make friends with local real estate people, because they're definitely complementary vocations. On the vacation rental front, how old now is DoneRight Properties, and how many properties are managed within that fleet?
Well, I started DoneRight Management back in 2004, although we didn't have a name yet. My husband and I bought several properties in the area, and so I quit my full-time job in the software industry and decided to just focus on our real estate. So I was independently managing, and I've never solicited for a client ever. It's all been organic and by referrals. But anyway, so the first few years I was just managing our own, which we had a slew of them. And then, like, my mortgage broker, she called me, she says, will you manage mine? I'm like, I'll show you how to do it, but you can do this on your own through VRBO. And VRBO was the only game in town. That was before Airbnb. And she's like, oh, could you just do it? I'll pay you. And so then she referred somebody, and then they referred somebody, and the business just grew. We are now at about 90 properties, and we do long-term as well.
And how many team members do you count on underneath those 90 properties?
It's very seasonal, but we have a full-time staff of about, I would say, about 23 people. And during our peak season, we have about 34.
Fantastic. And included in that is the great Casey Quinn. Shout out to Casey, right?
I couldn't do it without Casey. She runs the show, that's for sure.
And beyond just the vacation rental and real estate side of your life, I know you also place great importance on going out into the mountainside and having fun, specifically your obsession with what appear to be like very, very serious snowmobiles. What is the importance of that leisure activity in your life as it relates to your businesses? You need it?
Yes. We are like the snowmobile capital of the United States. Seriously, it's amazing. We have a draw from all over, and you can't drive down the street in McCall in the winter without seeing at least, a few trucks pulling their sleds or on their sled decks. But being involved in the activities in McCall, I think, is important, whether it be snowmobiling or boating or whatever it is, because you're going to find a connection with people who call in and say, hey, where do we go? Where are the trails? Do you have homes that accommodate snowmobile trailers? And we know the importance of providing that. So being that this is a passion for, and Casey is another example of somebody who is really passionate about her snowmobiling. But it's nice to be an expert in certain areas that provide knowledge to people who call in too.
And so are you taking like nice leisurely strolls around the flat paths?
No, we do backcountry sledding. So we have, we start off on a trail, but you end up in a side of a mountain, and that's the what we call fun. You have to be an experienced snowmobiler, which I can't claim to be a professional, but I'm working on it.
Listeners, it is one of the most extreme sports that I never knew existed. When you see not only the vehicles that Kelly is using, but the incline that she appears to be going up. I love too how a leisure activity, something that you really appreciate about the area, really perfectly complements our craft of hospitality. And I got to see you in your element a couple months ago. And what I notice is that you are just a complete doer. And I guess there's no surprise why that's in the name of your company. Have you always been somebody who, when she sees either a problem or reaches some sort of challenge, just goes for it?
Absolutely. I cannot sit back and let somebody else. I have to be in charge of my destiny for sure. And I believe that everything I do is ultimately the destiny of myself. So I know what you're talking about as far as the leadership I've taken in the community as well as my company. But I cannot sit back and hope for the best.
That's a good lesson for snowmobiling right there.
Yes.
And perhaps more specifically, do you think there are instances in which trying to do it yourself is actually not the best first step, rather going to people who have done it before?
Absolutely. You need the experts to guide you along the way. I'm certainly, I'm not about to reinvent the wheel, and being, that said, I guess I've, been involved with Right to Rent and try to listen to podcasts such as this and kind of seeing what other people are doing. But definitely, you know, Dana Lubner, she's been an amazing resource for me to listen to. All the people that she interviewed with the advocacy groups, taking notes on that and kind of how to approach this situation that we're in McCall.
And by the way, you also attend conferences. I know that. And is that something that you'd recommend to those who maybe aren't ready to jump and do it themselves?
Absolutely. Conferences are priceless. You learn so much. I've never walked away from a conference saying, gosh, that was a waste of my time. It's like I usually just pinch myself going, oh my goodness, you don't know what you don't know.
Very well said. Is there any conference that you have plans to attend this year that people can meet you at?
Absolutely, the VRMA. So I'm planning on attending all of the VRMAs this year. It's interesting. I have to say, in the last few years, I haven't really had a whole lot of time to be doing a lot of the conferences and being active in my community, but I've taken a step back from the business now that it's running so smoothly. Thank you, Casey Quinn. But it's allowed me to work on the business and not in it. And I know that's kind of a cliche, but it's so true that you cannot be bogged down being there and, run into the rescue of a housekeeper that didn't show up and cleaning and doing those things. I have to rely on my team to find, solutions to that. I used to always just say, just call me, I'll be there. Or I was the after hours person too for years. And I'm like, why am I doing this? It's just, it's crazy. You need to stop and say, who else can handle this? And you do need to find a competent team. That's one thing that is just priceless, is that, to find that team that can run the business without you there. because you will not have time to be doing these things that you need to be doing. And that is getting involved with the conferences and being part of city council and the meetings and the advocacy groups. And, recently I was solicited by our local housing steering committee, and they wanted me to participate in this conversation, or actually their monthly meetings that we have people from all across the country, and the major stakeholders in the city of McCall that are, worried about not having housing, affordable housing, and workforce housing. So I was honored that they did, that they sought me out specifically and invited me to participate in this group. I think I've gained a lot of credibility doing so. But again, you need to be able to take a step back, in my opinion, from your company to be able to focus on these other endeavors.
And is there any advice you have, like if you were to just up and leave and start a vacation rental company in a new destination, is there anything you've learned or any epiphanies you've had with regards to your team that you would place front and center in that team building exercise?
Well, I think SOPs, standard operating procedures, are imperative. And so, we have an actual very much of a shortage in McCall, and we've had to be creative in soliciting workers. So I pay very well, and we have all kinds of different incentives, and we make the work, the environment very fun. We try to just do all kinds of different, events that bring our team together, because I think it's important that we all communicate, and communication is more than just texting. So so we've been successful in getting some great SOPs put together, and we have weekly meetings, and I think you need to pay your employees well.
And before we move into this really pivotal moment for your company and your destination, is there any piece of technology that you're currently using that you don't think you could ever do without?
Oh, absolutely. It's our back end system. We currently are using Streamline, which I highly recommend to anyone, but that's also through a company called Casago, or Casago, however you want to say it. We've partnered with Casago about a year and a half ago, and it was one of the best decisions I've made. They kind of operate as a franchise, but we are very independent are independently run, using the tools that they've provided and the resources. And I have to say that has been a big part of why I can take a step back from my company. If Casey needs something, or anyone in my office, they have a resource through Casago to contact, and they've just guided them along. But also, I think Streamline is just a very powerful software, and that's been very beneficial. We also use dynamic pricing tools.
What's your favorite dynamic pricing tool these days?
I believe we're using Wheelhouse, but I know Casey is probably, she's, like I said, I try not to get too involved in all those decisions, but she's kind of played around with all of them, but we're currently using Wheelhouse.
Beautiful. Fantastic shout outs to two companies with great reputations, and Streamline, for those listening, is a property management software that, like Kelly said, is the core backbone of any great vacation rental manager's technology stack. And Kelly, you've perfectly segued with your Casago reference into what I really wanted to talk about today, what I think people can glean the most from with your newfound partnership in Casago, who we are filming for episode 2 of our new docuseries, Home Runners, specifically the co-owners of the company, Steve Schwab and Ryan Dame. And it was with Ryan that we came to McCall. Ryan has a little lake cottage there, and he's originally from the area as well. And we got to meet you. We had a really, really meaningful dinner conversation about the regulation that you were thinking about. And I'm curious if first you can share with listeners that first moment, I'm thinking of it as the zero moment of truth, when you realized your business and everything that you have been building was in danger? Was that overnight, or was that something slow and steady?
About 2 years ago, the city of McCall enforced they put together their ordinance. It's actually during the time of COVID. I guess the city employees didn't have a whole lot of other things to be doing. But anyway, they put together this short-term rental ordinance. And, it was, in my opinion, it was fair regulations. It really made sense. It was related to trash removal, parking, the number of people per bedrooms, just basic things, the noise level, things that we were already handling. We already had, in fact, we probably were one step ahead of them in having tools that monitor these things. So it was good to me because, you have bad actors and they ruin it for everyone. So I thought, okay, so now we have some good ordinances in place that will make everyone behave. And so that it doesn't put, that cloud over short-term rentals. So I get an announcement. In fact, I think it was the day that you showed up to McCall. A friend of mine who is part of the city council, he actually, I think he sits on the P&Z board, but anyway, he's been very active with the city, and he sent me this link or two. Yeah, it was a link to the meeting that they were having this special meeting, and it wasn't announced anywhere. He said, you just better be aware of this. And so they only allowed, I think, 7 people to be in attendance, and Casey and I went. We were the only ones that showed up, even though I had reached out to all of the other property managers in the area. It seems everyone's got a busy life, but anyway, we showed up there, and but it kind of hit me blindsided because I thought, oh, we have a nice, I thought the ordinance that was in place was adequate. Well, they didn't. So and I think that, and like I expressed to them, I think the problem is enforcement.
And so what was at risk looking at this looming threat?
They started talking about reducing the number of people per bedroom. So instead of having 4, which was reasonable, we're going to limit that to 2. This is all talk now. So that was one thing that was on the table. They were talking about the parking situation. And right now you can have 1 vehicle per bedroom, which is, again, reasonable as long as you have adequate parking. But now they're talking about actually prohibiting any parking on the road right of way. So if you have a driveway, and even though our neighbors can park on the road, the short-term rental people can't. So our guests are not able to park on the road, which I find hard to believe. That I don't know how they're going to enforce that, and I think that's rather unfair. Which I'm going to be very vocal about in a diplomatic way, to state that I think when we have rules, that it should apply to everyone and not just short-term renters.
And you mentioned trying to rally the troops, calling your fellow owners and managers in town. And I sensed from the way you just described that the response was not nearly as go-getter as you are. What have you learned in the way of mobilizing troops?
It's going to be a challenge, but you know what? I think that they need to see the severity of the situation. And I think that they thought, well, we have ordinance in place and we can all live with them. What more can they do? And they're going to be very shocked to find out what's going to be slapped on them if we don't do something and get ahead of this and state, here's what we can do. Here's, what we're willing to do, so we don't have to put these stringent, things in place that's going to hurt all of us. I mean, one of the things they're talking about is limiting the number of short-term rentals in the area. I don't know how they would do that. And actually, we're in a very fortunate place. In Idaho state legislature states that neither a county or a city may enact or enforce any ordinance that prohibits short-term renting. So we are protected by that. So they would have to actually go and get the regulation changed, which I don't think is going to be an easy thing. But again, if there's no opposition to it, that's what's going to happen.
And what kind of people have said, yes, Kelly, thank you for keeping your eye on this. We'd like to support?
There have been a few. And, we just need to coordinate it. I see that I'm going to have to be the leader in this and say, here, this is the date that we're meeting. If you can't participate, here, participate on the Zoom call. So I'm going to make it very easy and accessible for everyone to attend. And after hearing this, from last Friday, after hearing what's happening, we need to step it up. We need to get on our game and put a plan together.
So that meeting that you talked about that took place just after we left, you attended that meeting, you got your finger on the pulse, and they took a break for some consensus, or what?
Said, okay, here's some thoughts. This is what we're thinking. These are some things that we can do. Why don't we all, we'll convene. We'll actually come back and revisit this subject. And so last Friday, so a good month had gone by, probably 2 months had gone by. Time flies. Anyway, so they met again. I wasn't able to attend as I'm in Gulf Shores, Alabama right now. And but I did participate, online. They did not allow anyone that was online to speak, and there was no one present there. But I did write in a letter to the city council prior to this, and they didn't read the letter, but they did touch on all the points that I had made. And I talked about, I commended them for what they were doing. I think that's important to get on their, good side and not let them know that we're in opposition to what they're doing. And I stated that, there's some things in place right now that we can be using for noise aware devices and that's been a huge benefit to us. And talk about, your technology stack. I encourage everyone to get some sort of a noise aware device, and noise aware is a plug for them, I guess. But there's other things out there that operate similarly, but it connects to your reservation system. And if a guest is above a certain decibel level that we predetermine, they will receive a text letting them know that they're being too loud. It'll send them one text, and then the second text, the manager, myself, and some of the people in our office get a text message saying your guest has been warned twice. And if it happens again, then they notify us and it says it's time to intervene. So, but that's been it's been a huge, huge benefit to us, because I think that people, when they're on vacation, they don't realize that they're being too loud. I think they just get excited. I don't think it's parties going on. I think people just have a tendency to, everyone's talking and excited, and, and their voices are getting louder and louder. So I think that it's a kind nudge. Hey, can you keep it down? So that's been very beneficial for us. But I mentioned that I think that should be a requirement. If you're going to start enforcing rules and regulations, let's give these people some tools. And then the other thing is, I said, they're talking about making each home have a permit. So instead of being one permit through your property manager, so we're licensed through the city, instead making every home carry their own permit. And I'm sure they're doing that in other parts of the country, but here in McCall, they're not. And so there would be a fee associated with that. Let's say it's $150. It would go into a pool. So I said, why don't we use some of these funds to mandate some of these things? So I think enforcement is our issue here. You have a great ordinance in place already, but the problem is no one's enforcing it. No one is going out there. So they're calling our local, they basically sometimes they call 911 over a noise issue. So these, and so of course they have to respond to it. So it's taking up our local resources and tying them up. And so I said, if we had somebody that was designated to go out to these properties and verify if these are even legitimate complaints, then, that house, if it's a constant complaint related to a house, and if it's actually verified, they would lose their permit, or there'd be some fine or something like that. Maybe it's a fine the first time, and then if it keeps happening, they lose their permit for a year to rent, something to that effect. So I mentioned that. And as far as the safety is another. Health and safety of our community was another issue. So these houses, some of the houses are not, I've taken over vacation rentals that were managed by another company, and they didn't even have fire extinguishers or even smoke detectors. So there is an issue there. And I believe, how do we stop that? Well, they were talking about having our local fire department inspect each and every vacation rental annually. Well, and of course, our local fire department is saying, we can't afford that. How worse
You want me to do what?
So now they're talking about charging the homeowner for this annual inspection, which I'm not necessarily opposed to. If that's what it takes to make us all safe, and that's reasonable in my eyes. The one that I'm opposed to is this, two people per bedrooms, because I think we have homes that are 4,000 square feet with 3 bedrooms, and they're huge bedrooms, and they have 4 bathrooms, and it doesn't make sense to me. I don't think that I think that it needs to be an individual thing. I think that we need to go out, and again, maybe it's part of this annual inspection to say this room is not safe. You have a tiny little bedroom and you have 6 bunk beds. It's not safe. Or you have all these pullouts that people are going to be tripping over each other. That's not safe. But you might have another situation where you have these big giant rooms where it does make sense to maybe have 4 or 6 people in this bedroom.
And would you say that the act of stepping up, of leading by example, of proposing things that you've seen work, sharing examples of instances where it seems to be already in effect, does this give the control freak in you some comfort, knowing that at least you're part of the next steps?
Absolutely. DoneRight management is very much respected citywide. With all of I would say we are kind of definitely the most respected vacation rental company in and around the area. And our office happens to be 3 doors down from City Hall. I don't think there's any benefit to that we're neighbors. However, I am very visible and always have been at the community level. And I've actually brought a few of our homes through the CUP process, which is a conditional use permit. So if you have a home that's larger, which is kind of our niche right now, and that's why I'm so freaked out about this reduction of people per bedroom, because that's really where we make our money. We are kind of known for our big homes. So my husband and I, we have bought several homes, and we've converted these, huge homes already. We're not adding on to the homes, but we're taking unused space, like big storage rooms, and adding, making it safe, egress windows, and making them safe. They're not like cramming people in here, but this is what sells. People like to travel with their friends and family, and they have family reunions, church retreats, and all those things that they come to McCall for. Everyone likes to meet in McCall. It's a great central place for many states. We're surrounded by, I think, 7 or 8 different states, so it's just a hub. So I think we can be an example. I mean, we were permitted for 34 people at one home. We showed that we made a home that originally started off actually as 2 bedrooms, but now it's 8 bedrooms, and they came and inspected and they approved it. So we said we have plenty of parking, we have all these safety devices, we have escape ladders on the second stories. We've taken it one step further than any other company has. We've kind of took the step ahead and said, hey, let's be preemptive instead of reactive, and we've just gained a lot of respect for those things.
And if doing things right, to use your phrase, you've given us examples of safety, of cleanliness, of legal and compliant. What does that mean for those who are maybe on the other end of the spectrum as you, the proactive, responsible vacation rental professional? What do you think it means to those other individuals' businesses? Like, what competitive advantages do they not get to enjoy?
You need to get in the game. And, I think that everyone, even though you don't want to be the person in front of other people, definitely participate in those groups. They exist. And if, you might not be the person to be in front of city council, but you can certainly help form a group to, meet with your other colleagues, other stakeholders in the area. You don't just want to get the other property manager involved. You want to get people who own restaurants and stores and and in the neighbors. It would be great to get these neighbors involved. I mean, you might get some lashback from them, but at least you're getting their input, and it goes a long way. But and you can form the committee, but you don't have to if it's not in your blood to stand in front of city council. You don't have to be that person, but or just join the group, be part of it. I think it's very important to be part of something beneficial in your industry. It's imperative, in fact.
Mm. And listeners, we're going to do something unique here that we haven't ever done before, because the work that Kelly does is not overnight. It is little deposits in the social capital piggy bank, as we say. We're going to come back and follow up part one of this little discussion with Kelly in a few weeks. Kelly, what is your hope by the time we chat next? What is your hope? What happens?
My hope is that I have been successful in forming this committee, this advocacy group, with locals. That would be step one. And then two is that we can put something together and get in front of city council to help them, guide them in their decisions. I think that I think they're misled. I think they're hearing from the wrong people. They need to hear from us, who are the experts in the area, and we're the people who can make the change.
Okay, listener, time for a little time travel. Just after the break, we'll reconvene with Kelly several months later and learn whether her hopes came to fruition. I promise the updates will have you thinking. Here are two tools that epitomize the theme of first mover status, the kind of products and services that actually give you unfair advantages over your competition. Point Central provides smart property solutions for smart vacation property managers. They help streamline operations, protect the property, and enhance the guest experience using keyless access. Why? Because guests are tired after traveling, duh. And being able to go directly to that property with keyless access instead of stopping at a manager's office, this is no longer a luxury. This is a standard practice. Plus, everybody loves avoiding extra trips due to lost keys, not to mention the constant cost of rekeying. Point Central partners stay aware with an activity log of who enters and leaves the property, which helps keep track of cleaning and maintenance crews as well. You can also gain control of your utility bills with their smart thermostats. Schedule set points so guests won't be able to drastically raise or lower the temperatures, for instance. You can ensure the temperature stays consistent when the unit is vacant. Prevent costly maintenance projects caused by water leaks, mold, or HVAC issues with real-time alerts that allow you to be proactive. Visit pointcentral.com/VRMB to learn more. And Breezeway, whose property care and operations platform helps you coordinate, communicate, and verify the detailed work and deliver the best service experience to your guests. With tools for intelligent task scheduling, quality assurance, real-time work coordination, guest messaging, supplies management, owner reporting, and more, oh my! Breezeway helps thousands of short-term rental managers and hospitality operators increase your operational efficiency and eliminate hours of manual work. This allows you to boost your service revenue. It was created by the founding team of FlipKey, which was since acquired by TripAdvisor, and Breezeway is just elevating the experience at every property they touch. Visit breezeway.io/VRMB and get implementation fees waived. That's a $1,000 value right there. Okay, let's get back to the show. I think you have something exciting to kick off part two with, and that has to do with the official launch of the Valley County Short-Term Rental Alliance Committee. Were you involved or responsible for this?
I was absolutely responsible. In fact, to some degree, I felt like I was leading the charge by myself completely. I will say that this has been a very challenging procedure and endeavor. But I just, for all those people out there that are starting your own alliance, don't get discouraged. I mean, I feel like I'm just on this roller coaster of emotions, because one minute I feel like I'm doing this all by myself. And the next minute I just like, no, this is great, and people do come together, but you've got to meet, many people's timelines. And sometimes that, your schedule isn't what works for everyone else. But I will say that, so my first meeting was on March 21st, and didn't plan that one so well because it was spring break. However, I was amazed to see how many people did show up. We have a very small community here. And I sent out the invitation to 7 property management companies, and we had a representation of 4 at that first meeting.
And what was your initial reaction there? Was that like, yes, I got 4, or was that, dang, I only got 4?
No, I was thrilled because I think I talked about this during our last session that, I've reached out to this group of people, and it was kind of crickets. And I'm like, okay, hello everyone. Do you realize how important this is? We're gonna be affected by this policy change, and you've got to care. This is your business. So anyway, it was amazing that I kept just pursuing them. I just kept sending emails out and saying, let's meet, and so anyway, we did have 4 people show up representing 4 different companies. And I think for me, I explained to them, I said, not only is our ordinance, and our livelihoods looking to be changed, but we have been a group that's been very polarized for so long. And I said, I just want to bring us all together, and we can share ideas and help each other out. And I just think that this is important in so many ways. And even after, this whole ordinance goes away, or it never goes away. But after we, finalize and meet with them and do what we need to do, let's keep meeting and share ideas. So we met, and I did, we did introductions, and I thought that was important to kind of share where we're all at. And it was interesting to see, I've been doing this for 3 years, I've been doing this for 5 years, and we had Vacasa there, which was great. We had a representation from Vacasa, but we are all on this different part of our journey, and so we all had something to bring to the table. So I explained the goal of the alliance, which exactly was we wanted to put a plan together that we were going to try to, I think first and foremost, because it was such an immediate need, is to tackle this ordinance that they are trying to revise.
And may I ask, Kelly, do you think that having that kind of imminent threat or common enemy looming was helpful in a way?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I reiterated, I just said, what, if we're not sitting at the table, we're going to be on the menu. And, they all got it. And it is so true. I think that it's interesting because Idaho state legislation went out and it protects the short-term rental industry, but they've left the governing up to the individual municipalities, and they can not necessarily do what they want, but they can certainly regulate however they want. And this is what's happening. So, and it definitely will affect us. So anyway, we just talked about, some of the revisions. I felt like I was educating everyone. I'm just like, okay, a lot of them didn't know what I was talking about. And I said, we've had 2 meetings so far, and this is where they're heading. And, I said, do we all agree some of the concerns? I mean, like some of this, no, that's good. But this is not.
Do you think that having now 4 additional voices on your team singing at least a common tune lands differently with whomever you're talking to?
Absolutely. I said, we have to be on the same page here, and we have to be on the same forefront and come together as a group and saying, this is what we want. This is what we're willing to negotiate. And, and we all agree. And I also said, we need to bring in some other stakeholders. We can't just be the property managers who are kind of stomping our feet saying, we want this. But we also say, bring in some, maybe local realtors, some restaurant owners, other business owners, and even some neighbors, get kind of their feedback and see what they want, and then if we go in as a united front and all of us are saying, we all agree on this, then what can they say? I think that they're operating out of, I won't say ignorance, I will say misguided information. And again, they always hear from the opposition. So they are being very knee jerk on this.
So, in addition to getting these folks together and unifying the voice and sharing that voice with the recipients, it sounds like you've also been contacted to speak on behalf of short-term rentals in other capacities.
Yes.
What's an instance or two of that?
Well, I guess most recently, and this has actually been on ongoing basis, to participate in the local Housing Action Plan Steering Committee, which is a group of major stakeholders in our community, owners of the ski resorts, of hotels, um, and then participants from city council and as well as the city itself. They held their first meeting, and then they decided that they needed a representative from the short-term rental industry, and that they wanted a local authoritative person, and they chose me, which I was thrilled and honored. But it's been very, very beneficial. I think that I've probably had more of a voice in this committee than anyone else, and brought up some really good ideas to help with that. Some of the things that they wanted to do, in addition to like deed restrictions and partnerships and things and tax incentives, is they wanted to regulate. One of the topics was regulating short-term rentals, and I said, "What does that mean?" And they said, "Well, basically the way I interpreted it was, let's make it very difficult for people to short-term rent, and they will automatically they'll stop, and ultimately these homes will become a bit more available for long-term renters, or even if they choose to sell to a local person." So I said, well, first of all, you got to be very careful with, regulating short-term rentals. I said, it depends on what you're trying to do. They wanted to hire a lobbyist, a local lobby group. And I said, well, I think I don't know if that's the best use of our money right now, because there's so many other things that we want to do, and everything takes money. But I said, you're dealing with, you're fighting against a big battle here. First of all, we do have the Idaho state that protects us, but also I said, Airbnb and Verbo, they have a lot of money, and they're not going to just let you start trying to prohibit short-term rentals in certain areas as they're talking. I mean, there's, I guess, some cases from Sandpoint and stuff, but I hear that there's also legal issues going on there. So I'm like, so I think I deterred them in that area, which was a huge boon.
Is there anything that you've learned about tone or messaging in order not to come off as completely defensive?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. You got to, it's a give and take. And so, I was the first one to say, hey, I've converted several of my short-term rentals to long-term. I have 35 employees that I need to house. I mean, it's not necessarily my burden, but it is. If we don't have, employees, we're all stuck. I mean, this is going to, it's going to be the downfall of our town. So I said, I can continue working on that, but we have a lot of people that are on the fence right now. Is there any incentives that the city could provide, or somewhere we could maybe, we have a lot tax. It's a hefty lot tax, which they're looking to increase as well. But if they do, can we, push some of that money towards incentivizing these homeowners that are kind of on the fence, or talking about second home conversions? I said, I would be willing to personally contact as many as you want. We can kind of cast the net out there and see if we can get some of these second homeowners to convert their properties into short or into long-term rentals, for even if it's just for a period of 1 or 2 years, until we can get some of these other things off the ground. So they were actually thrilled to hear that I was, I was the champion. I really felt like they were really just happy to have me at the meeting, and that I had some really great ideas. And so in turn with that, so after we had our final meeting on Thursday with that, and one of the city officials came up to me and said, can we meet and talk about your plan to do this? But we'd also like to get your input on the regulations that are looking to be modified. So the short-term rental ordinance that they're looking to update, they wanted my opinion on. I go, I'd love that. So instead of me having to reach out to them and saying, please meet with me, please, I need to get in front of you, they actually contacted me. So I was like, yes. They also, had me, they wanted me to participate in this other discussion, which is held tonight, which I'll get into in just a minute. But back to my meeting with the city on Friday, it was very good. And I did tell them that I'm opposed to this limiting of parking based on number of bedrooms, that we're having to modify our listings to conform to parking. And I said, that doesn't make any sense. I said, there's numerous families that have 6 children. They might have another family that joins them of 4. So that's 2 cars for a 5-bedroom house, perhaps. I said, but you're telling us we can't, if there's only 2 parking spots, that we have to tell them it's 2 bedrooms. I said, that doesn't make any sense. I said, what would make more sense is to actually see a copy as part of the permit process, which they're proposing, and a whole new thing that they're proposing, which I'm thrilled about, is part of that permit process is to actually give, in addition to the floor plan and all the things that they want, is to give a copy of our listing and make sure that we are telling and being very transparent in our listings to say that we have X amount of parking. So this house has 3 parking spots. It is a 5-bedroom and it only has 3 parking spots. So we do not bring, there's no street parking. You'll be towed. You will be fined, whatever we need to say, but they will see that I think it's more important to be clear with our guests, which we've always done, because you don't want people to get up there and find out there's not enough parking. So I think that was kind of a no-brainer. And she said, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to go back with that.
So they're kind of like viewing you, if I'm understanding this correctly, as a great asset to their discussion and decision making. You're speaking rationally, you're speaking with experience, you're speaking with data and hard facts that you have honestly researched and experienced over the years. And it sounds like any council should want this kind of level-headed input on behalf of a sector that in a lot of cases it almost goes completely silent, despite the fact that these noise problems are like front and center in a lot of destinations. Do you see yourself as a virtue to their decision-making process?
Oh, absolutely. They've actually asked me to come present to the there's another committee called the Housing Advisory Committee, and I've been asked by the city to present to them as well. And they would like me to present on, me converting the short terms to long terms, and also tackling the second home conversion, but also to speak about my thoughts on, how short-term rentals are being affected and how they impact our local housing if they do. And I'm going to have to prepare a little bit more for that meeting, which is in May.
Have you had any associations or groups within the industry that have been of use that others, if they're listening to this, may want to reference?
Yes. I actually participated in a forum for rent responsibly. I cannot promote rent responsibly enough. They have been a huge asset to me. They have been very responsive. I reached out to them, and it took them a couple of weeks to get back to me, but we set up a meeting with Brianna Pope, and she was just so wonderful. She sent me just packets of information to use, how to form your short-term rental alliance, advocacy groups, just all kinds of different tools that are in this packet of stuff, which I have shared with the group. And then, I've been on to the community builders. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's the Facebook group. And I encourage everyone to seek that out as well. And if you want to contact Rent Responsible, they can hook you up with that. So there's all kinds of resources out there. VRMA is a great resource. They have some great advocacy groups going on, and initiatives that they're tackling as well. And everyone's willing to help. Just reach out. There's so many people that are there. So I think your best bet is to start with the Rent Responsibly group.
And looking back now, you're relatively new to this whole advocacy thing, and yet it probably feels like decades that you've been fighting it only in the last year or so. Is there anything that you have learned, any lessons that you'd like to share with folks just to be aware of?
I think my main thing is just don't get discouraged, because again, and I didn't even share this, but my my first meeting went so well, and then the second meeting, I only had 2 people show up, and the third meeting, it hasn't happened. I mean, it's just been, I've been, okay, does this date work? No, no, no. But we are meeting again this Thursday, and it looks good. That I think I'm going to have full participation from the 6 property managers, property management companies that have raised their hand and said, I will help. And I'm just thrilled.
Do you do anything to stay motivated when it might otherwise get depressing?
Yeah, I get this, I hate to say it, but I get this attitude of, I'm just going to do this on my own. I don't need them. And I'm like, no, I do. And I feel like I kind of don't, but I know that this is, I don't need to do this alone. And I really don't want it to be just my voice. I want us to be a collaborative group of people coming together. And maybe what I want is not what they want. And I want to make sure that I'm projecting that to everyone, because again, we all need to be on a united front. Otherwise it makes us look really bad. And I think there's power in numbers. And so I just reach out to them again. And I think honestly, my group has been great. So the people that have raised their hand are the people you want on board. And I will say that 2 of the people, it's a husband and wife team, they're actually my number 1 competitors in this industry, which is ironic. But we have formed such a great friendship. And they are the ones that championed the legislation. So back in 2016, well, it took about 4 years. So I think it was Jonathan Frost. He was, I think he started probably 2012, 13 or 14. Anyway, it took him several years to get this passed, but he is the one who really got this Idaho legislation passed. And so I thought he'd be the first one to raise his hand to say, hey, I'll help out here. I see what's going on. But I don't think he had any idea of what's going on. I think that, there's these city council meetings can sometimes be a little bit secretive. And when they're trying to get something passed, I don't think they really want a whole lot of opposition. So we don't know about these things. And the only way I found out is I have, an insider that passed this along, say, hey, you want to be at this meeting, and here it is. So I guess my second piece of advice was to form some form of friendship with somebody from the city. Now, this guy sits on the P&Z, but he gets notified of all these meetings. So, and now since then I've become friends with people at the city council members, as well as the P&Z. So it's very, very important to have some form of connection with these people and have them believe in you, because they will champion for you and keep you informed and abreast of anything that's going on.
I think by part 3 of this podcast series, you may be the mayor.
Well, it's really funny. I really do enjoy doing this. And I think, as I stated in our last discussion, that I've had the opportunity to step aside from my company. I'm not in the nitty-gritty day-to-day stuff. So I feel very blessed that I've been able to do this. We know that there's a lot of other property managers that are just starting out, and it's a lot of work. I used to work 14 to 16 hour days when I first started this company. So I know what they're going through. It is a lot of work, and they don't have the money or the resources, whatever it is, to be able to do these things. And I've told them I'm willing to do the brunt of the work, but I do want your input and support. If nothing else, just to be on my side and stand behind me and say, yes, we agree. So the last thing I kind of wanted to mention was that I have a meeting tonight on, it's called Doing Democracy. And it's a public discussion that's sponsored by our local library. And they have this every month, they have a different subject. And this month, it's called Are Short-Term Rentals at the Tipping Point of Causing Our Neighborhoods to Disintegrate? And they've asked me to participate in this this discussion as the representative from the short-term rental industry. So I'm happy to do that. I'm expecting the darts to be thrown, but I'm going to stand firm and try to sway them with my charm.
So are short-term rentals at the tipping point of causing our neighborhoods to disintegrate?
If something's not done.
If something's not done. How I love this final quote from Kelly. I was completely expecting her to say, no, of course we're not causing neighborhoods to disintegrate. But doing so would overlook what I now realize we've learned over the last hour. That seeing regulatory issues and communicating them for both sides and speaking factually about the consequences of the lack of responsibility. This is actually Kelly's big unlock. This is what actually lands when it's sung in harmony with her fellow owners and managers in the ear holes of her local decision makers. Sure, Kelly could sing this lead part all by herself, but let's be honest, she needs a few other people singing in order to make it sound good. Unfair regulation can come down out of nowhere in your destination too, and if you don't think so, you're probably not paying attention, because these conversations are taking place behind closed doors, likely without you. If you don't get off your butt and bring yourself a seat at the table, that table, you will be on the menu for lunch, and it'll be a bad lunch, catered by like the hotel industry or something. We've included all the links, important links, mentioned in today's show in the show notes. And if you like this podcast, by the way, please consider writing us a review on your platform of choice. It actually now notifies me when we get reviews, and I get to do a little happy dance. In fact, I think I'm going to feature the reviews on future episodes, so be sure to include your company name. If you want to get a pulse on advocacy and other important trends stifling and accelerating vacation rental owners and managers, download VRMB's 2022 Trends Report. It is easily the best $24 you will spend this year. Until next time.